Prior to installation, the eccentric rod needs to be bent. These are about 12-degree bends on either end of this particular rod, and the bend starts at about 1 inch in, 25.4 millimeters in from each end. The fixture is a pair of 3/4 diameter roller bearings, 1/4 inch pins. They are 7/8 center to center. I'm going to lay the rod in there, and I'm just going to drive this 45-degree radius wedge down in between them and make a nice clean bend. You could probably do this with just pins, but I know from experience if you use just pins, you're going to get drag marks and abrasions on the outside of the brass. Easily filed out, but why bother? Usually, let's use rollers. All right, let me get this on a tripod and get it done. It's going to only take a minute. During the assembly of this particular model, there are just a couple of spots where you really need to take close notice and pay attention to how things are adjusted. You cannot just screw these together and have them work. It's not how it goes. The throw on the crank is fixed. I do not have the other cap on, and there's only one screw in the rod, just for sake of setting this up for this shot. On the maximum stroke, when the crosshead slide is all the way out, you want to make sure that the piston falls within the length of the cylinder. In this case, it does not. That means the very first time you tried to fire this thing up, this piston would bottom out on the cylinder head and it wouldn't move any further. The adjustment for that, the only adjustment you have, is to turn this rod right here and drive it farther down into the crosshead slide. So as the eccentric of the crank comes around, you have full control over how close that is to the end of the cylinder. Let's stick it all the way in there and see what happens. And don't forget that the cylinder head itself has a small boss on it that will go down inside and potentially cause some interference. You want to check it out. Feed the cylinder over the piston and watch for it to come out the end. If it comes out the end, you need to adjust it back in. Same thing with the backstroke. Watch for this gap here to close up and not hit the inboard head. If it bottoms out, it'll lock up on the backstroke. So you want to see that gap right there behind the piston. I would say that would be very close to being exactly what you're looking for. That is the first adjustment that you need to be very aware of, so be very aware of that. Second adjustment is on the valve itself. Let's take the cylinder, assemble some components on the cylinder, and show you what's going on inside here and how to adjust it. The underside of the valve has a 375 square in it, and that 375 square will only overlap 2 of the 3 holes here at a time. Let's see if I can position that so you can see it. It'll either cover the last 2 or the front 2. But with the eccentric of the, well, it's called the eccentric and connected to the crankshaft, you want to position this so that the throw does exactly that. Transitions from one to the other. You have minimal adjustment here to adjust where this rod sits. That will move it back and forth. It will not move once it's locked down because this side does lock. It locks to a small clevis that connects to the eccentric rod. The other opportunity that you have to adjust this is at the eccentric, where the eccentric sits on the cam that sits on the crankshaft. Simply screw it in. That's hard to do when it's bent like that. Simply screw it in, and that gives you all the other adjustment that you need. I don't think I would recommend messing with too much of this. There's not too many threads down inside these small clevis sections. So just enough for a nut on the outside and enough for a nut on the outside of the mating part. Use a paper clip or something if you're going to test fire these, because once they're all assembled, they can be a bear to adjust. Knowing that that was done behind the scenes, let's put it together. If you flatten out the Teflon packing material before you try to install it, it makes it a lot easier going in. It will swell up after a couple of minutes, so be sure to re-torque the flanges. Installing the packing from the front is much easier. Do not forget about the 2 screws underneath. They're hard to torque down, but they're there. If all went well, you should be able to clock the cylinder mechanism to the main base at 90 degrees. I used a 1-2-3 block and a surface plate to check mine. Love it.
Damn, it's hard to do it. God damn, carry away. Ugh.
Okay, builder's note. This morning I went looking for wrenches to tighten these down. I knew I was going to have to turn them in opposed directions, and I did not want to use needle nose pliers. I went out and bought the cheapest screwdrivers I could find, and I slotted the ends. There you go. 97 cents these were each, US 3/16. So anybody looking for 3/16 open end wrenches, good luck. Pay close attention to the gap on either end of the valve. Regardless of the timing at this point, you need to make sure that all the rods are adjusted to the correct length. I know for a fact that this is not correct, but I want to show you what you're looking at. Okay, I'm bottomed out. We're talking about, I guess it's about a 3 mm gap right here. Watch the other end. And full stroke back. Let's go full stroke to the front. Okay, much tighter. See the gap now? You want to balance those gaps out. That is really important. And the way I'm going to do that initially, I'm going to pull this pin back out, which is why it's only a temporary. And I'm going to use the adjustment that I have. Right there. And test it again. That little hole is a booger fine. Jeez Louise. There it is. Alright, let's cycle the cylinder one more time. I would say that gap is just about perfection. Completely exposes the one port while it's covering the others. Let's see the full stroke this way. Beautiful. Can't ask for better balance than that. Once everything is locked down, although this rod does float, it is not going to change where it's at. The only thing that needs to be changed now is the orientation of this cam to the stroke. I say that's a win right there. We're going to leave it right where it is, lock everything down, and time it. Actually, I'm going to put this cover on first, and the flywheel, because I just can't wait to see that. Assembly drawing shows it as horizontal, but you can see the rod flexing. Watch the rod. This rod is going up and down on an eccentric. See the flex right there? Back here. Watch it go down. That's got to be stressing the valve inside and up again. Alright. Anybody building this? Horizontal on the pin, okay? Clevis got to go vertical. I'm going to adjust that right now. This guy right here has got to be the toughest part of the entire model to adjust. It is more than apparent. My Teflon has seated, and this needs to be adjusted. But boy, that's really tough to get to. I don't know if I'm going to bother. I'm going to leave it right where it is for now. Let's take a look at the horizontal positioning of the pin. The rod needs to be able to float. Boy, that's, you can't even tell it's going. Alright, who wants to see some air? Let's do it, right? Drum roll, please. Moment of truth, people. Moment of truth. Well, guys, in the absence of a base, in the absence of any more parts to make, that brings us to the conclusion of this particular project. If and when I paint this thing in the future and put the appropriate fittings in here, these are quarter 40 fittings, I will be back and I will give you a second visit. If there's anything that you want close-ups of, if there's any questions for all you guys that bought these models, by all means, put something in the comment line. I'll be happy to answer your questions. I have learned a lot along the way, and I thank everybody for their comments, their views, and their support. I am thrilled. If this is the only thing I get for Christmas, I will be absolutely just beside myself. I love it. First one ever. Thank you all very much. Merry Christmas to you all. Happy New Year, and see you 2021.